Welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good anything to everyone, depending on the time zone that you are watching. In this session, I would love to walk you through the process of building and, more importantly, to running easily an event sourcing app. And the idea is we are going to focus on the right tools and the right techniques that will allow to easily go from a monolithic application to an scalable application using event sourcing. So let me first introduce this. This will be mainly a handout session or a live session in which I'm going to use. I promise to use a few slides. My idea is I will try to show as much code as much of the real thing running, so that you could get a good grasp of how you could do the same in your next project. Basically, let me start by introducing a little bit of what we are going to do. What we are going to do is we are going to take the approach of building a monolith, a modular monolith that could run into as a single application on just one machine, but at the same time, we will be prepared to scale as we need. For example, if we find that one of these modules starts to become more complex or need some more attentions in terms of maintenance or the number of releases that they have, we could try to define to split that module into a different module so that we could easily manage all those applications on its own. But maybe at some time we decide that we need to define another module and then split into another application. But at the same time, we need that all of them still should be running together. And at some point, maybe one of these becomes more complicated or gets more workload, and we need to scale up that specific module under cluster or create more instances to support that extra workload. And again, our goal is to show how we could easily go from the first stage to the final stage using the proper tools. And the proper tools will be, in our case, using Axon Framework as the way that we use to write our applications, and Axon Server or Axon Cloud to manage the way that those modules, those applications can interact with each other. So basically, going back to our first stage, I want to go a little bit deeper into what we are going to do. And what we are going to do is we are going to take as an example a bike rental application. In this bike rental application, we are going to think first on the number of actions that we are going to support from our application, which could be, for example, we want to register a bike into our system. That would be like creating a new bike. We could also allow our users to rent a bike or to return a bike. And for those actions that we will identify as commands, we will have a bike handler. And this bike handler will have or will deal with its own model of what a bike is. And this model is focused on exactly what the handler needs to know in order to properly handle all these commands. So the bike in this case will be just a regular Pollo, which is going to have an ID and is going to have a Boolean that will help us know whether that bike is available or not for rent. We may have also another module, another of these areas in which we need to provide some sort of queries so that someone can request which is the status of all the bikes or which is the status of a particular bike. And then we will define some queries, and we will define another component that is going to handle those queries. And for that, the handler will need to require its own model of what a bike status is. And for a bike status, we will need the ID, the location where the bike is right now, and who is the last person, or who is the current person that has rented that bike. Maybe we could even find ourselves in a situation in which, in the future, in which we need to add some reporting, and we need to find or to provide some sort of mechanism in order to get all the history of a bike. Well, this is more or less the three modules, or the three different areas in which we are going to split our application. And as I was saying, the problem is that we want to be prepared, so that whenever we need to split the application in different modules and start running them in different machines or as different applications, we need to coordinate somehow how those modules are going to interact. And for that, the ideal way is that as developers or as operational teams, we don't need to do anything beyond splitting those modules in different machines. So kind of we need this magic happening here. And for this magic happen, we will use Axon Server and Axon Cloud, provided that we are using some of the proper techniques that we recommend using Axon Framework. So let's get started. Let's create our project, and let's start from the very beginning, from the moment in time in which you need to face the blank page syndrome, and you need to start a new project from scratch, and you don't have even a clue what dependencies you should be adding to your project. And for that, we have our first tool, which is AxonIQ Initializer, which is very much, if you are coming from the Spring world, you will be more or less used to using the Spring Initializer. So for us, this is more or less the same idea. We are going to go to start.axonic.io, and we are going to get started with our project. Let's do it. So I'm going to point my browser to start.axonic.io, and then the next thing that I need to fill is the group ID for my project. In this case, I'm going to use io.axonic.eventSourcing, for example. And then the artifact name will be bike rental, and the name will be bike rental. The description could be that. I can also specify which is the default package for my classes at sonic.demo.bike rental. So we have our coordinates for our new project, and the next thing that I need to do is add the dependencies of what libraries I'm going to use. By default, given the fact that I'm using the AxonIQ Initializer, it's supposed that I'm going to do the things using Axon Framework, so that later on it's easy to split the application into different modules. So I have already defined this Axon Framework dependency and the Axon test, because of course we all use testing for our applications. But at some point I could add any other connector or any other dependency that I would love to do. For example, let's say that I already know that we are going to create some subscription queries, and I need some kind of reactor dependency. So I could, for example, add the Axon Reactor extension, or let's say that I want to add some security to my UI. So I could also add the Spring Security or whatever I need. So in this case, for the sake of this simple example, let's keep it simple. So now that I have all my dependencies added here, I could finally download the package, download the initial version of my project. But I can also share this with my team in case I'm not directly doing. For example, if I want to create some kind of template for new projects to get started in my team, I could provide them with this link so that they could directly download this initial version of any new project as template. So in this case, I'm going to download this first version of my project. I'm going to put here on my projects folder. I'm going to create a specific folder for this, and then I'm going to save the bike rental application. In this case, I'm still here. So let's switch into that project, EventSourcing, and then here I'm going to unzip it. Now I have the project here. I'm going to switch into that folder. That folder already has my Maven project. I could have easily changed. This is something that I haven't shown because the resolution was so big. I could choose between a Maven or a Gradle project, Java or Kotlin, Java 8 or 11. Very soon we are going to have Java 18 here also available, and the way we want to package our final version of the project. So in this case, as I was saying, we already have the initial structure here. So the next thing I could do is I could open this project in my favorite IDE. Let's do it. And if it's taking some time to open the IDE, there we go. Because I had another instance open here, and he was asking me a couple of things. So the project is open or should be opening. It's taking some time, but eventually I will have it running. There we go. The project structure is loaded, and now it's trying to get all the Maven information. I'm going to leave it here, and I'm going to fast forward a little bit because I have another instance created. But basically, trust me, if you give a little bit more time to resolve all the dependencies and load the different structure, you will get something similar to this other version that I have here. So this is basically it. Let me clear this. And this is basically what I have. This is the initial version of the project, in which basically what I have is just a bike rental main application and the POM with all the dependencies in place that I have created using the Xonic Initializer. So the next thing that I can do is I can start adding my own code, and for this I'm going to fast forward a little bit more, and I'm going to load some of the code. If you're interested, Allard is going to deliver a talk right in an hour or so, and he will be able to go more slowly through the different steps of this code. So my point here is to show a little bit of the code, but to show you how you could use Axon Cloud and Axon Server in order to run transparently in different places. So I'm going to fast forward a little bit. And I'm going to show you directly some code that will have our application. Now that we have this created, I have a command package, and this command package basically has a bike. This is a regular aggregate, and it's also an entity. I have a core API project in which this is a Kotlin class, but basically this is just the definition of the different commands that I have and the different events that we are going to use to communicate the different modules between them. And also I have what we could consider our query module. For now, this is just the same application. We only have different packages, but everything is going to run on the same instance of the application. I have now a bike status, which is also the model for the query part of my application. I have some projection here, which is going to update the model status for the bike status on every event that the command is triggering. And I'm also going to define a couple of query handlers. And last but not least, we have the controller, which will simply define the entry endpoints for our application. In this case, for example, I will have a register endpoint, which after receiving a put on our system, will just register our application. And for registering our bike, the only thing that we are going to do is we are not going to do directly the changes in our state. What we are going to do is we are going to use a couple of components that are provided by Axon Framework, which are the command gateway and the query gateway. In this case, the command gateway is going to be used to issue any of the commands. So after receiving a request to register a new bike, the only thing that we need to create is the command that represents that request and send that command using the command gateway. The command gateway will, this will mean that Axon Framework will immediately call the proper command handler. In this case, the command handler is the register bike command, is the method that is defined with the command handler and receive as an argument the register bike command. In this case, is also the constructor for the aggregate or our entity. But we also have command handler for renting a bike, in which we are going to check the state, and then we are going to change. We are going to check the state, then we are going to change the state, and then we are going to apply or to trigger the corresponding event so that any other modules could be notified of this event. That is something that is important for some of the components, or could be important for some other components. So the point here is that I have a small thing here on my phone that basically is this exclusion, which means that I'm just going to use Axon Framework, but I'm not going to use any kind of server for this. This could be for a local development. So let's try to show how this works, and let's try to run our application. And then boot run. Let's start our application, and let's do a couple of requests to showcase how this works. Okay, in this case, I can first ask for the number of bikes that I have defined on my well, it seems that maybe it didn't start. I need to wait a little bit more. compiling the first time could take some time, especially if you are sharing your screen and if you are on stage. Okay, there we go. We are close. We are getting there. And right now, I should be able to invoke the query application, and the query is going to return nothing because I have nothing defined. I'm going to register a new bike in Madrid. And then I'm going to request the number of bikes. And this is it. It's a simple application. The only thing that we have done is we have split we have designed our application using CQRS, and we have split in different modules, splitting between the commands and the queries. And the only thing that we took care is by using the command gateway and the query gateway, we are just trying to decouple the way that we are defining the controller and the way that we are invoking the different controllers. And the last thing that we are doing is using this method apply means that we are using also the internal message bus to send the notifications of these events. But in this case, as I'm not using any kind of external infrastructure, everything happens inside the same Java virtual machine. So this is quite our first states. This is our monolith, modular monolith application, which is running in just as a single app. I'm going to stop that, and I'm going to fast forward a little bit more to step 4, I think. And now the only thing that we have changed is that this exclusion that I told you before on the pond is not here anymore. We don't have the exclusion on the Spring Boot starter for Axon. So that means that our application with the same code is going to rely on some kind of external infrastructure in order to send all these messages. And this is where we could be prepared for the magic to happen. Let's start now our application. Again, it's the same application. The only thing that we have changed is that we don't have this exclusion. So now that we are trying to use that connector to an Axon server. Let's start. And now the application is going to complain because, as I was saying, we are relying on that external server that is not there. So one of the possibilities that we have is we could use our own version or our Axon server running on the same machine, so that Axon server will take care of routing all the messages and storing all the events that are happening. So right now it's complaining that the server, there's no connection to an Axon server. So one of the things that I'm going to do here is I'm going to start my local Axon server. Axon server is just a thing that you can download and use. The standard edition is for free. You have the enterprise edition that has much more features, like the ability to run cluster and so on. But for development purposes, you could even use the standard edition that is going to add as a message broker and an event store. So after a few seconds, I have my Axon server already running on my same machine. And now I can see that my application has already connected to this Axon server. So hopefully the application is not complaining anymore. And now I could send some request. Let's again register a new bike, maybe a couple of them more. And then we could get the list of all the bikes. We have two because I think that the second time I didn't click on the button to send the request. So the thing is that even if we try to, for example, rent one of them, now this is rented. If we go now to our Axon dashboard, we will see that we have several different commands being issued, like we had the rent by command being sent once, and we had 2 register by commands sent. We had also some queries, and we can even search for the different events that were triggered inside the application to communicate. Well, not the different modules, because right now we still have a modular monolith. So this case maybe makes not much sense, because we are relying on that external server just to get the same events rerouted again to our same application. But this is the point in which, without changing any code, we could split some of these modules to a different place. And now the last, I will show how to do that a little bit later, but the last thing that we could do is, imagine that you don't want to run an Axon server on your machine, or you want to share this server between different people. Well, another thing that we could have is, let me stop the Axon server. And then another thing that we could do is we could easily go to Axon Cloud, which is basically an Axon server on cloud that you could use for development purposes or for production purposes. So all you need to do is sign with your Google or GitHub account. Go to here, and then log in with your account. And after that, you only need 3 steps in order to start using your Axon server on cloud. The first thing you need to do is you need to create a workspace. A workspace is like the main separator, the main container of any Axon server instance. In this case, I'm going to call it demo. Oh, demo event source. Yes. Okay, after demo EventSourcing leave, the second thing that we need to do is create a contest. A contest is like is similar to the environment that you are going to use. In this case, I'm going to use, this is the demo, and then I'm going to define the region in which this contest is running. And the next thing that I need to choose is the contest type. I could choose between 3 different contest types. The developer purposes is free, but it's enough for development purposes to get some data for free for 14 days. We could also go to a single node or to a multi-zone node if we want higher availability for our data. But for this, let's keep it with a free tier. And let's create the contest. And one of the things that we need to do, the last thing that we need to do is we need to create an application binding. The application binding is the connector that will allow to connect our application to the Axon server. In this case, I'm going to use the bike rental demo. I'm going to select which contest is attached to. I'm going to save, and the next thing that is going to give me is a set of properties. It's very important that you write down this token, because this token is not stored, it's generated, but it's not stored in any place. So in order to be more secure, we are not storing this token here. So I'm going to copy the configuration for my application, and I'm going to go back to my project. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to specify these properties for my application. In this case, let's go back to our application and let's start it again once that we have set the new set of properties. Spring ambient, Spring Boot run. And now, after the application starts, we will see that the Axon framework is connecting to the external Axon server in our cloud. Let's wait for that message to come up. Just a little bit more, and now we can see that we should see here at some point. I think I missed the. Yeah, here we have that we have been connected to our Axon Cloud server. So right now, if I again try to send some requests, now I will say that on my Axon Cloud console, just let me show. I could see some statistic of the number of commands that we have received. Also, I could access the event store and check for or look for the different events that have been triggered and this kind of things. So the last step that I would like to show you is, now that we have think that we are playing around with the same code, and now the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to again fast forward a little bit, and then now I have distributed services. The only thing that I have done is we have gone into using different profiles. So I'm going to start again, and I did something wrong here because I did not. I think that I still have it, because one of the things that I need now is to again paste here the data to connect to our Axon server. So now I'm going to start our application. I have two different applications or two different modules that I'm going to run as independent applications. Spring Boot run, and then I'm going to Spring Boot run profiles command. Let's run just only the command module as an independent application. Let's wait a little bit more until it starts. This is the profile that it's using. Meanwhile, I'm going to start another application for the query module. I think it's the other way around. And I also need to change port that the server is running. Okay, our command module is already available. So that means that I could send some requests, some command request. I'm going to register a new bike. A couple of them more. And if my module, my query module has started, which it has, I could also run some bikes, some queries that will, no, I need to ask different oops, it seems that I may not have started in the right place. But in any case, what we could check is on our dashboard, we could see that both modules are connected to my Axon server, and the Axon server is taking care of rerouting all the events and all the commands from our code to the right module. We could even start another bike rental query module or scale up, and the only thing that we need is to check that they are connecting to the right Axon server. So this is more or less what I wanted to show you. So let me go back to my presentation in order to finish and finish my demo. So basically, what's the point? Using the right tool set, it could really make it easier for any of us to write proper DTD, CQRS, and EventSourcing based applications that will be able to start with the design in mind to be run as a modular monolith, and at some point we could reach out to different places. And we try to provide this tool set for your toolbox. The first thing is Axon Initializer to get you quickly started creating new projects and handling all the dependencies that you need to set up for the initial version of the project. We have Axon Framework, which is an open source framework, so that you can build applications based on DDD, CQRS, and EventSourcing, and try to use this abstraction layer to use another servers to do the message routing on the event store. You could even configure some others, but we also provide Axon server as message router on event store, and even more, you could directly use, if you don't want to run on-premise Axon server, you could use our Axon server as a service in the cloud version. So if you want to know a little bit more, a couple of places where you could go from here is right after me, Alar is going to give another talk, much more interesting probably, and going much more into the detail of how you build those applications to be prepared to properly scale up with an easy effort. Also, we have some sessions scheduled in which you could join us and ask any questions that you may have on this way of building applications. Also, we have an Axon Academy, which has some free courses that will probably help you better understand these DDDS, CQRS, and event sourcing concepts. And even we have a couple of more interesting links. If you point your browser to this landing page, we have tried to gather up some interesting information regarding these kind of techniques that could be interesting for you. So I think that's all. Thank you for going with me in this walkthrough.